Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
I had a number of amendments. I think it was a hard meeting to record. I do want to say that.
Yeah,
It was out of the ordinary. So Charles, you were not listed as an attendee and I know you were there. Or I don't see you listed.
I took the notes and I even put myself on.
That's just.
And then the minutes last time, there were some amendments. And I don't remember what they were. I remember one from Jess. And the minutes were approved as amended, but it doesn't say that here. And then Steve was not there to announce his resignation from the committee. So Bert announced Steve DeTrolio's resignation. As I recall, if somebody remembers differently, please jump in, but I'm pretty sure Steve was not there. Yeah. And then I just thought we should add the superintendent's last name, McLaughlin.
Okay.
So that was a number of changes, sorry.
Okay, perfect. Bert announced, and sorry, what was the last one?
To add the superintendent's number 12.
Okay.
His last name's McLaughlin.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Anything else? I have a query, because I'm trying to learn to take notes. If I put down that you made the motion, then you said you had some amendments. As a note taker, since you already have them, am I to put them in my notes for this meeting so that they know that they get it? That would be a good policy. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, and I probably should have waited to submit amendments till after someone seconded the motions. Yeah, so the discussion follows the second. So I should have raised my hand or whatever and said,
That's a clarifying question then,
Yeah.
because I think in Conservation Commission, don't we do amendments first? And then we recommend approval with the amendments.
So there's a second. So there's a motion and a second, and then there's discussion.
Yeah.
If there's no second, there doesn't have to be a discussion.
And there's a couple of ways to handle it where they don't even have to be amendments. If they're friendly amendments, the person who made the motion agrees with them. And then if there are no amendments, apparently you don't even have to vote on the motion or vote on the minutes from the last meeting, which is something which,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, that's something that Robert's Rules does, but
say the
the
last thing
city-
again.
City,
So if there are no amendments, you don't have to vote
Oh.
on the minutes.
Oh,
that's not something that the city
You
council.
could say,
Oh.
we accept accept the notes as they are.
As
You-
presented.
Correct, as presented.
Yeah, you don't go, you say the minutes are accepted as written. That's
That's
what you said.
correct. But the way it's normally done is someone makes a motion and it's seconded. Then there's amendments, the amendments are voted on, and then the motion itself is voted on.
Very formalized process.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
so we need a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Yes.
I make the motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Great.
All in favor?
I,
Okay, we have a very ambitious agenda this evening. We have 12 items in 120 minutes. That's 10 minutes per item. So I'm going to switch things up on the order a little bit and first ask, do we have any of these items that can be covered in 5 minutes or less with someone that can be the owner or the lead on this? Other people can obviously chime in, but on the topics that we have here, I don't think goals are gonna get done in 5 minutes, but any of the other ones that could be covered in 5 minutes?
I know the EV and solar ordinance updates could be done in 5 minutes.
Let's start with that then.
Sure. So I'll start with the EV ordinance updates. At the last city council meeting, the city council passed first reading of the EV charger ordinance, which the committee looked at probably 2 years ago. Some amendments were made to it, which passed, and the big amendments had to do with whether or not the EV parking infrastructure, so we picture I can call it transistor box, but the transformer, whether the parking spaces that the transformer fits in are going to take away from the total number of parking spaces required. And the council amended it so if you picture you have a box store with 900 parking spaces like a Walmart, then they won't have to add additional parking spaces if they take away parking spaces for the transformer. But that is coming up for public hearing and second reading at the next city council meeting, which is a week from Monday, I believe,
May 6th.
May 6th. So that's the update there. There's 2 solar ordinances. One of them, the Sustainability and Planning Department is still reviewing, which is coming up with some sort of solar overlay district for solar farms. The other solar array ordinance is the amendments to the current zoning ordinances regarding the HDC's authority, whether solar arrays should be in their purview. And that's coming up for a first reading at the upcoming city council meeting on May 6th.
And the other one, the solar overlay district for solar farms, that's just in the works.
I believe so.
Well, I can add a little bit to that. The planning board, is tonight hearing the historic district ones that are coming to the council on May 6th, because the HDC reviewed them and then sent them back to the planning board, which sends them to the council as they agreed upon on May 6th. But, there was talk of including this bigger citywide solar piece, which includes solar farms, but it also includes other solar amendments to make it more in the forefront that what you can do as solar as an accessory use and what you can do as primary use and that kind of thing. But the thought was to put the two together might create too much confusion and slow it down. So that one is still coming.
Do they have something they're looking at though in the planning board?
The planning board will, but they didn't want to send it tonight. So
Oh,
I think the department's done with it. And then that'll go to the planning board soon.
so might it be with the agenda for tonight or no?
It's not on the planning board agenda for tonight.
No,
The one
okay,
on the planning board agenda for tonight is the one Josh mentioned,
Okay.
historic district changes.
great. Thanks.
Yep, and a lot of that is from the Soul Smart membership that we took,
Okay.
and they were recommendations from Soul Smart. So those are sort of structured.
And let me clarify what I got. The transformer issue is in the works. If it works out, then it'll be easier to put them on because people don't have to have the extra parking spots.
Correct. That was the crux of the amendment.
That's the question. And with the historic district, the issue is, should they be coming to them or should they be coming to the planning board? Or
Just exempt.
Exempt from going to the HDC.
just exempt, people can put them on where,
They would still have to follow the other ordinances and still go through the same process.
but it doesn't go through it doesn't need that extra.
Correct.
filter.
It doesn't need the extra step of the plan.
Boy, thank you.
HDC.
All right.
Any action needed from this committee?
No.
Okay. Thank you. We got one checkbox, low hanging fruit, very concise and informative. Thank you. All right. Does anyone else have something, an item that they can cover within 5 minutes?
I think the number 10 on the places
Places
to
to live?
live would be 5 minutes, but I'd like to do that with Peter after we do number
Conversations.
4. So 5 minutes, but it should be later in the agenda.
Perfect. Are there any other low hanging fruit?
We can do the community engagement committee update real quick.
Let's do that.
So the sustainability fair was almost 2 weeks ago, Sunday, the 11th. And we had 750 people come this year, which was 250 people more than last year. We had bands, we had food. The general feedback was very positive. People really seemed to value and enjoy their time there. We've already had several people ask us about when next year's is going to be, and the Connie Bean's already on board about hosting, so it seems like all systems are go. The organizing committee or the planning committee has already met and kind of debriefed and starting to think about next year as well. So that is all very positive. Anything else you would add to that? And then the other piece we could talk about is we are working on our series of community conversations. So we tentatively are starting to plan those, but the first one is scheduled for May 30th, I believe. Let me make sure that's a Thursday from 6:30 to 8 in the Levinson room. And the topic of that one is going to be plant-based eating, but it's also going to talk a bit about, I think, soil and just gardens in general and that kind of stuff. John Forty from Bedrock Gardens is going to be there, and Ann Bliss is going to facilitate that one, and still figuring out who else is going to speak at that one. Yes.
I heard somebody say that the 750 number,
Yep.
they stopped counting after Daglin left, and that there were a lot more people that came after. Well, somebody said they thought the number was higher. Is that incorrect? Because I heard that, because I think 750 is great. Is it possible there were more, or do you know when they count stopped?
I don't know. So I know my aunt was sitting at the table initially counting everybody as they came in. I don't know if she was capturing everybody who was outside, because that was some feedback that Effie got. Some people didn't even realize there was stuff happening inside. They just did the stuff outside and left. So then Christy from the library took over the counter, and she was trying to keep track of who was outside and who was inside, but she was also trying to man a table. So that was her
So I guess
estimate.
what I'm gonna
So
say is 750 is perhaps a conservative count.
perhaps, I never had control of the clicker. That's just what I was told. So that's the number I'm going with.
Great.
Yes.
And we do have other topics for the set of 5.
Oh, yes, we do.
You want to mention those? Because I tried to list them and I forgot a couple.
Sure. Give me 1 second and let me see if I can find the community conversations. So our topics are the plant-based diet, 1, transportation, where we are from a year ago, strategies in the CAP, working with the city neighborhood committee, and TCAG. A health topic to follow up the one that we started last year to kind of discuss health and climate change more in depth. Adaptation and resilience, which that one's actually scheduled already, and energy. So EVs, wind, solar, heat pumps, community power.
And as of Wednesday, Christy Bryant and the library are signed on as active partners on this, which is great.
It's great.
As an exhibitor at the, I don't know if you call it exhibitor, attendee, community member at the sustainability fair, it was super engaging. I thought it was a really nice mix too of having food and music, different backgrounds exhibiting there, the way it was laid out. I just thought it was a really nice engagement, and I put some stuff up on social media about it and had an incredible amount of views with the band, playing. So it was a really positive event to be there, and it made me feel proud to be part of this community. Thank you.
Kudos to the organizers.
Really nice job.
All right, do we have any other low hanging fruit?
Probably CAP update.
Cap update? Okay. Cap update?
Would it help if I did the renewable energy policy first? I know they're tied together.
Sure. Great.
Okay, so I'll.
Great.
And we Kate had sent everyone out the renewable energy policy itself from 2018, correct. It's amazing this thing is 6 years old. So, I'll just hit a couple key takeaways with this. I guess, first, there was a renewable energy committee, which had 9 people on it, 2 city councilors, a member of the school board, Peter was on it. Several members of the community who now actually have worked on what is the new energy committee called?
Peak, Commercial Energy Advisory Committee.
Thank you. So they are a wealth of knowledge. So we had a number of experts on this. But what I want to focus on here is we went with net zero energy for the entire community. And we defined net zero energy in the now, therefore, as, and I'll just go ahead and read it. Move Portsmouth towards becoming a net zero energy community where, on a source energy basis, the actual energy consumed on an annual basis is less or equal to locally generated renewable energy. So it's pretty straightforward. There was some debate initially if we could do 100% renewable energy versus net zero energy. We determined at the time that 100% renewable energy was not possible in the state of New Hampshire because the government didn't own energy production, and people could buy their energy from whatever source they wanted to. So people couldn't be required to buy their energy from renewable energy source. Therefore, we can never technically get to 100% renewable energy. So that's why we went with net zero energy to sometimes come up with the actual definition of net zero energy. We then came up with 3 levels and 3 phases. So I'll start with the levels itself, and level 1 should be the easiest to achieve, level 2, the second, and level 3 more in the distant future. Level 1 focuses on municipal government operations achieving net zero energy. Level 2 focuses on the Portsmouth community, which included residences, businesses, and other non-municipal users, such as the PDA, achieving net zero energy. And it's pretty cool that we put this in there so many years ago, that level 2 will also seek to examine low-income residents and environmental justice-related issues within the context of Portsmouth's renewable energy policy. That's something which you are far more likely to see today than half a decade ago. And then level 3 focused on the distant future, which is first on all vehicles originating in Portsmouth. So people who essentially live in Portsmouth or businesses in Portsmouth, and then on vehicles that travel throughout the city of Portsmouth, achieving net zero energy. And the reason why level 3 is distinct from level 2, it's to acknowledge the amount of time that might be required to achieve level 3. Because I think at the time, there was something like 70% of the carbon emissions coming from the city of Portsmouth were from transportation. A very large figure like that. And then to go along with this policy, the committee created a final report and recommendations, which is a pretty thick report. I remember it's 50 pages or what have you of some of it's aspirational, some of it was low-hanging fruit of things which the city could do to achieve these 3 levels. And those are just the levels. So I'm going to touch really fast on the phases. Again, this was 2 things happening at the same time. The first, I guess, strategy was to increase building efficiency to achieve this goal. Was broken down between existing buildings and new buildings. The second strategy was to increase renewable energy production. And this was on both a utility scale for renewable energy, along with the commercial scale renewable energy, and then residential scale. And some of the things which we proposed in this framework quickly became outdated because the science said, hey, this isn't the best use of this. For example, There's three things which the report talked about. One was a waste to energy regional anaerobic digester. The second is biomass at Schiller Station, and the third is harnessing the Piscataqua River and the Gulf of Maine. It's actually, I read recently how Schiller Station's now being
Mhm.
ideally transformed into a energy storage area, and that's what we had proposed, is ideally this would become a location for energy storage, whether it's from offshore wind or whatever else. It already has all of the transformers and power lines required. One thing which we included, which I would not have included today, is the biomass at Schiller Station itself. Schiller had I think it's 5 smokestacks. One of them, the fancy one off to the side, was always pumping off the white steam, and that was from burning biomass to create electricity. And what I didn't realize at the time is it's fuel efficient to burn biomass to create electricity. So things like that have since become outdated. And then the third strategy simply focused on decreasing conventional automobile use. So it was a wide array framework which was meant to achieve net zero energy, and specifically these 3 levels. So that's a lot I threw at you. If you have any questions, feel free, and I'm still proud of that report.
The reason I asked you to report is because it's specifically listed in the ordinance for this committee that be one of our guiding documents, the renewable energy policy. So I thought it was really important for this committee to be familiar with it. And a follow-up question I have is whether we should look at updating the renewable energy report. I know that, what are there, 85
There's like
recommendations or something?
75 recommendations. So
Yeah.
when I had initially talked about doing that, when I decided to run for city council again, maybe 3 years ago. And at the time I wasn't sorry, what a climate action plan was. And then upon learning what a climate action plan was, I'm like, oh, that makes more sense,
Mhm.
is do a climate action plan, which involves this policy.
Mhm.
And some of the things in it, hopefully be included in the climate action plan. Some of the things could fall to the wayside. It would be nice to actually put dates on this. I wanted to put dates on this. Again, I can't do math, 2018, March, 6 years ago, but I didn't have the support from the council to actually put dates on this.
Mhm.
So we just left it open. It would be great if this were ever revisited. It would be nice to put actual dates, and with things like climate action plan saying, hey, this is what we could achieve, and it would make sense. having
So what
that.
I was picturing was even using the draft climate action plan as it stands and comparing it with the renewable energy recommendations and saying, oh yeah, that's here, that's all set. What happened with this one? You know, where did this recommendation go? You know, just to see how much of the renewable energy policy came through. I think the consultants looked at it, and a lot of it was about the greenhouse gas inventory, at least the first several recommendations. So, you know, maybe we're all set, but I don't know.
No, I think that's a good recommendation, and it's definitely worth exploring further.
I had a question. Oh, good.
For that. Effie, I really like our educating ourselves and bringing it, that it's the mandate of the committee. So I'm gonna put in a note if you think what I was hearing, it might be good, once we get the cap, that the committee spend a half an hour comparing it and then get our group mind on. Or do you think it's good enough as it is? I don't know whether we want to put on the agenda item or whenever after the cap comes out, or just wait and see.
I think we'll hear about the cap in a little while, but I think it's fine to use the draft form of the cap. I'm not expecting big changes in the cap. I could be wrong, but you know, as far as the targets go, and a lot of it, I think, will look like what we've
So I
got.
guess for next meeting, might we say, let's take the draft
Yeah.
copy, let's take this, all of us will have a chance to review it,
Mhm.
and then I want to educate myself on it.
I think from my initial efforts to do that, it's not simple. And I think what we would come up with is a number of questions, but that would be worthwhile in itself and move this forward.
So I'm gonna put next meeting, let us review where we're at in terms of the comparison to the
Mhm.
cap and the current form of the energy. Is that clear enough?
I just had I just had a question about the Gulf of Maine piece. Did it say renewable energy in the Gulf of Maine or resources from the Gulf of Maine? I forget how it was worded.
It was for offshore wind.
Offshore wind. Okay.
That was the focus of
Yep.
it.
And that also is where Schiller comes in.
Correct.
Yeah.
One piece that also, it's relevant and ties into community engagement, there's an event on May 7th, Driving the Future of Transportation. It's gonna be at Green Wave on May 7th. And it's sponsored by NH Saves, Eversource, Liberty Electric Co-op, Unitel, hosted by Green Wave. I can send some of that information out, but it's for NH Energy Week.
Green Wave at what time?
May 7th, 5 PM to 7 PM.
Great if you could send out the link for that.
I will.
Yes.
There'll be some fun personal electric vehicles. Or-
Josh, I really appreciate your work on this, and I just want to say the fact that it stood the test of time is really a recommendation for the group that put that together.
And maybe there's a option once we see how the cap is taking shape for this to be a refreshed and be a companion piece.
2018, that is very innovative for that. And with it staying the test of time with all the different changes of learning about which is the best waste energy, bioreactors versus, I don't know, plastics or,
Yeah.
that's a whole controversial topic on which waste energy, but
And we started it in summer 2017.
Wow.
That's when we did all the framework. It just took 3 months to get the council to pass the policy. So,
Well, you assembled a great group, however you did that.
you were mentioning that was a segue into another topic.
into the cap update.
Okay, do we feel complete on that topic?
I'm happy with that.
Well, it will be brief. So we did a little bit of talking about the cap at the sustainability fair, which was great. And we are really just waiting for our next meeting with the consultant team, which should be next week or the week after. I can't quite remember, but they're gonna give us sort of a finalized schedule of when things will be done and when a draft will be ready. A full written draft with all the chapters and everything. And I think our plan, once we have that, is to review it with city departments, review it with the sustainability committee, and then once we think it's ready to go to council, bring it to council.
Yeah, and the city departments have had a chance to see it. There really shouldn't be a lot of work done. I think it's been a little bit challenging to get them to give us a date, and that's the big reason we want to meet with them and see that the only big addition to what they're gonna do is provide some more detail on implementing the strategies,
Yeah,
but the strategies
that's
you've
great.
seen, it's more about how to make the strategies happen, what it'll cost, that kind of thing that we haven't seen yet, so. I'm hoping that they can get it done soon, but we don't have a date. We couldn't get them to give us a date until we meet with them, so.
When you say that there's been a version around, is that just basically it's an
All-
update of the strategies, or does it go as far as to have
The
targets?
strategy, the version of the strategy,
Strategy.
and that's gonna be the sort of the key point, and the targets are as well. And that lays out greenhouse gas emission reduction as well as adaptation mitigation.
The targets assigned to different sectors or strategies as well as. the
Well, the
plan.
targets are in there, but the cost or the ease of implementation and more detail on that is what we're
Mhm.
expecting to see, and we haven't seen yet.
And that's with the criteria that they have on cost and feasibility. And
Yeah.
Uncertainty, that sort of stuff.
So, hey, could you let us know what the consultants say. I think we're all very eager to hear something
So are we.
solid. Yeah, I know you are. You work for that. That would be great.
We
Thank you.
definitely send an update via email and we'll just blind copy everybody.
Yeah, rather than waiting for the next
Right.
meeting.
Month is a long time.
Great, thank you.
And I think just to get back to the renewable energy strategies, it might be useful also, I think it's worth talking about before the cap's completed, but it might be useful to pair up the things that were identified in the 2018 report and this, and maybe that elevates them to prioritize them.
Right. Yeah.
This has been talked about since 2018 and it's been talked about again, and so maybe that's a way to prioritize it and give it a little more weight. Push things
Right.
forward.
Yeah.
Seeing how that all pairs up.
Any action needed from this committee?
I do have one thing that's not quite finalized yet, but Peter and I were talking about hopping onto a table at the farmer's market with the city manager potentially. And probably talking about the cap, and if we have the draft cap by then, which I think late May, early June, we will. Just sort of being like a last plug to the community members to see if anyone wants to come to the city council meeting to see the presentation, sort of just good press around that. So I don't have a meeting
And
date
talk
yet.
about other sustainability things too, really, but
Talk about it,
Yeah.
but if anyone wants to hop on that, it'll probably be the last Saturday or second to last Saturday in May. Unless we decide to do one in June, but I can't make any in June, so. probably
I can do the ones in June. I can't do the last one in May, so. Well, if anybody's interested, how about that?
I'll send out a poll. That's my action.
It's definitely Saturday, not Sunday.
It'll definitely be a Saturday
That's
Send out a poll for volunteers to sit out.
to see if anyone's interested. Yeah.
Mm.
That's it.
all right. So we can close that one. Are there any other low hanging fruits?
Yeah.
Okay, let's.
Committee
Okay, let's-
membership update. As you know, a couple of people recently dropped off the committee and Bert and I were talking about that and looked back at the ordinance to see what the requirements were for committee membership. So right now, we could add up to 4 new members. And what the ordinance says is they should have a demonstrated experience or passion for sustainability, mitigating climate change and protecting our ecosystem. So we have to think about that, 4 members. And then we need 1 member from this committee who will also serve on the Energy Advisory Committee because Herb used to play that role and he's no longer on this committee. I don't believe we have that otherwise.
I'll just add a quick correction. So now we
Oh,
can
sorry.
add up to, I think you said 4, but we can do 5 now, or
No.
sorry, 6.
Oh,
Because unfortunately Aubrey had to resign his position
Oh.
because he's getting really busy with work and he has some new projects that he's working on in his spare time. So that makes our full-time voting members down to 5, and we need between or 6.
I thought we had 7, so down to 6.
6. and we need
Okay.
between 7 and 11, I think is what it said. So,
So we can have 5 new members.
right.
One of us or them to serve on the Energy Advisory Committee.
So we have some recruiting.
If he, we were invited to do that. And we had one. Because I'm now seeing that I'm trying to get what is desirable and what is mandated, because I'm seeing that a lot of stuff that I used to just take kind of, this is the way we do things, now has a more formal structure. Is there some formal place where we said we are going to, or is that, because I thought Herb said he would like to do that, and then he said, then he did that. But,
It's not in the ordinance.
okay, I didn't think it was, but we're saying that the general thing that we want to do without spreading ourselves too thin is to have connectivity, as Bill would say, connecting the dots. So we're all informing as we roll on. Just-
Liaisons to other important activities.
Yeah, and
Mm.
so why I'm trying to clarify this, as new members come on, uh, we had a little sheet that had 3 people interested in the committee. One person I invited to come tonight. And I'm gonna suggest that maybe we think about each of us, if we meet people who meet those criteria, that we start inviting people, and I thought a good way to do it, and I'm throwing this out for a little bit of discussion, is invite people to come to at least maybe 1, 2, or 3 meetings, to just be here for them to get a feel of what we do, and for us to get a feel for them as we move forward, because I think at this point, we're looking for people who are going to be able to function in a committee that has a lot of demands on it right now. And one, because sometimes we had people who came on who had good intentions and but they didn't have a role to play. So I'm thinking, what do you think? Do we just the old process was anybody applies, we send it to the mayor and we accept. So is there any feeling about the process we want to have for getting new people to come on board?
Process in recruiting, right?
What?
In recruiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do we want the recruiting to be ad hoc? If you've got 3, I can think of 1 or 2 others who might be interested. Do we want to organize that and centralize that, or do we just want to encourage people if they're interested to come and find out with no commitment?
I would think the latter. If we only needed 1 member, then we could be very specific. But if we have this many openings, it would make sense, just like, hey, if you know anyone who's interested, like I invited someone to come to this meeting and she obviously is not here. Just invite anyone you know who might be interested to come to the meetings, and if they feel it's a good fit, they could join. But I think just recruiting whoever you could think of who may be interested.
Keep it informal and friendly.
And I think it's a great idea to have them come to the meeting,
Correct.
starting point. See what they're getting into.
Yeah.
You know.
To make it more informal, we probably don't want to post in like the newsletter, or really advertise it pretty widely. Keep it low key.
Average, I don't think it would hurt if we advertised it, because we advertised that we would get people who we don't know who might be interested.
Hmm, yeah.
So if we were, yes, so you're saying that in the next newsletter, that there's an opportunity for those who might be interested in serving on this, the newly formed Standing Sustainability Committee. They're invited to come to such our next meeting.
To learn more about the committee.
Learn
I
more
think
about
it might be maybe, well, just to give my 2 cents. I don't think it's a bad idea to put something in the newsletter. I don't know if it's invite people to come join the committee as much as talk about the committee and that it has openings at this time as more, maybe, I don't know, maybe.
I like the way you distinguish it. You put it, I would go
So
with
it's
that.
not like we really need members.
Yeah,
You know,
that's-
it's more like the committee. you know.
It could be that there are opportunities to become a member. If you're interested and you'd like to learn more about the committee, you're welcome to attend the meeting or to contact somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just keeping in mind that it's really the mayor's role to appoint the people, and we don't want to usurp that or somehow get in the way of that. But I think it's a fact that there's openings on the committee. If it could come up in the newsletter as that would be better as a point in the whatever newsletter.
But maybe we wouldn't say there are 5 openings.
No.
for example.
No, you think something's wrong. I think that the
Yeah.
last newsletter mentioned that there were openings on the neighborhood committee, I think.
Yeah,
And it
that's
said,
usually how it's
contact
framed,
any
yeah.
of the city council members, which seemed kind of strange.
Well, they recommend to the mayor, and so
Mhm.
Is that the natural attrition rate?
no.
You know, we've never had this. I would say Personally, I spend more time thinking about this committee in the last 2 months or even year than I did. Significant increase. And I think for myself, the fact that we shifted from a blue ribbon committee to a sustainability committee is indicative of the world condition is such that anybody who is aware of what's happening on the planet is thinking about sustainability. I get it on a very personal level. I get it on an international level. I get it on relative levels. And so to come on this committee, I'm even thinking, well, I have the energy to do what this committee needs. Because we are literally, in my opinion, in a time frame that is so short to make the changes that we need to make, that I'm just looking to bring my best skills, and I don't know if any of us, somebody I work with talks about from doom to active hope. If anybody's seeing the big situation, you can get into doom, eco-anxiety. Active hope doesn't mean we're going to get there, and I never thought I'd be here. I'm on various days, I don't know if we're going to get there. But my active hope is that everything we're doing is going to make a joyous, positive work now. So in answer to your question, I think we're in a very dramatically different place. We've never had this many people come out to start with. And we had that flurry of activity. And so anyway, I think we are in real transition. Does that answer? Yeah.
So I want to follow up because I actually had two people come up to me at the sustainability fair when I was manning the table who were very interested in being part of this committee. And Peter, what you said actually struck a chord with me, is that they're supposed to be appointed. So what does that process look like? I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I
that
could
process.
speak to that. So
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
any standing committee, along with the blue ribbon committees, there's a single form that can be filled out. It's on the website. It's a simple, I think it's 2 pages. Sometimes people also attach their resume if they want to, and you just fill it out, your name, your address, your phone number, the committee you want to be on, and it gets filed with the city clerk. And then the city clerk will bring them forward to the mayor, and the mayor generally from there puts them on the next city council agenda, first to be considered. So we'll just have the stack of applications, say these people are interested. And then at the following meeting, we would vote on them. The difference being the city council only votes on the standing committee members like we now are. We don't generally vote on blue ribbon committees because it's the mayor's prerogative if he wants, whoever he wants to appoint to the committee. So yeah, if you go to the city website, if you probably just go into the search bar and put committee application, it should take you to the city clerk's page where you could just download the application. And yeah, it's pretty
Thanks,
much
Josh.
it.
And you don't have to be on the committee to come and even participate.
Yeah.
Like any committee really, but this committee even more so, I think. You have the opportunity to come and see what it's like, participate. And then if you want to make it more formal, you can apply and become a member of Maryland.
Which is a healthy thing. I mean, say, for example, both Chaz and I presented as friends, I guess last year or the year before, and ended up becoming members. But that's it, often a kind of a nice, easy, positive route.
So could I clarify then, because I appreciate what you brought up, Peter, that we're not usurping, but are we still good with writing a newsletter, in the newsletter, that what did you state if you were gonna write it, what would you okay with what you got?
Sure, like putting in a learn more, like a drop into one of our meetings upcoming to learn more about what
Yeah.
we're doing.
Yeah.
There are membership opportunities.
Consider.
If you'd like to learn more.
So I'm gonna write in the notes that Kay will write really a well-crafted little note to the newsletter. I have to say, I am impressed. The truth is, when Aubrey sent a little note to us, I was thinking of composing one. Kate composed a really, it wasn't flowery, it was just so true and honest and good. I said, I want Kate to write my notes forever.
Pardon me.
Well, would it be, should we put an update about, maybe,
What we're working on.
maybe what the committee's working on or what we're talking about, or maybe an update on the sustainability fair also, and committees working, the climate action plan, I don't know. We can come up with something, but I think that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking, would be a little more than just,
Mm.
it's a committee that has members and there's some openings.
We'll write a blurb about our
Yeah, it's
committee.
good to have a blur about what the committee's doing and about this meeting kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be great. Good idea.
Bill, you had earlier, I think you said you had a topic that was 5 minutes, but there was a segue to it.
Yeah, it was the item that's the questions and the criteria,
Would
which
this
is
be a good time for it?
after the questions and the criteria.
Okay. Are we okay with moving into questions and criteria?
Okay, I think everyone got a copy of that, and just to refresh, this came out of the meeting, the last meeting where we were talking about goals, and I think there was a suggestion to do something similar to what the Conservation Commission has, and just shared a list of questions for that. And I agreed to take a brave first shot at this, because I think what it does is, in a very healthy way, ask us to be a bit clearer about what our role is and what we mean by sustainability, and how to apply a sustainability perspective to important topics that are coming along in Portsmouth. And so hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at that. Maybe I'll run through it just really quickly, and then we can get discussion. What I'm hoping is that this is something folks find is useful, and that we can revise it to everyone's satisfaction, and then it should become a flexible tool for the committee to use to try to do number one, increase the awareness and the importance and value of sustainable practices among residents, businesses, municipal staff, and other stakeholders. Advise the city manager and council on improving sustainability of city operations. Third, advise the council on a sustainable approach to future growth and redevelopment. So those are our primary responsibilities. I included a definition of sustainability just for clarity purposes, and that this, once this is done to everyone's satisfaction, I think it's very good to include a definition of sustainability for the broad audience that this might end up being useful for, or the context that it might be useful for. So that's certainly something that can be tweaked. I think I also included some examples of the sorts of major initiatives that are coming along, where a sustainability overlay or perspective could be introduced. And I think the question is what, when, how, by whom? And I think that's very flexible. I mean, I think this is intended as a flexible tool. I had some examples of proposed activities where a sustainability perspective could be introduced. And those are in screening proposed projects for the capital improvement plan. So for example, as appropriate, it might be useful to ask about impact on greenhouse gas emissions for proposed projects, probably infrastructure, buildings, transportation sorts of projects. Whether the proposed projects support implementation of the cap. The master plan update, which I think is coming early next year, 2025.
End of this year.
End of this year, the redesign of Market Square, which got kicked off last night. Planning for affordable housing, and that's the little 5-minute piece that can be a kind of a tag on to this, or ordinances to reduce waste. So any thoughts up to that point on the general purpose of this? And then And then I took a shot at 7 questions that could be applied. Let's say if somebody from this committee participates in any of these types of activities or other future activities that come along, this would be something to have in hand. It could be available for city council members or for city staff, just as a kind of a screening tool to start thinking about what it means to consider sustainability.
I really like the questions in here. One thing I would suggest adding is reduce, reuse, and recycle. Because I was looking for waste.
Yeah.
Because we have greenhouse gas creation, but the waste aspect is just some way to capture waste.
Yeah, it's there as an example, and I was
Right.
thinking of that as well, because this
Yeah.
generally really focuses on energy
Right.
and emissions.
Mhm.
One way that we could bring that in and still have it be tied to greenhouse gas is to talk about like life cycle, the entire life cycle assessment methodologies, which are tied to greenhouse gas emissions. And then that brings in the whole, end of life conversation and circularity and waste.
Great,
Like that.
as long as everybody's okay tipping over a page.
Bill, I'm sorry. I remember last month I had trouble with this too. I'm just not clear. One thing, first of all, on what we're screening as a committee. And then the second question is mostly Kate Cook and Josh and others were involved in crafting the ordinance
Right.
and the language for the ordinance. And in a way, I feel the ordinance is broader, which I think is a good thing.
Mhm.
For example, it cites standing for environmental justice and protecting the ecosystem. That's huge, but that's in our ordinance. And so I guess the first thing to get clear on for me is what are we screening? And then the second thing is I would go back to the ordinance and look at that, but that's just me.
I think I really respond to, these are the kinds of things that are keeping me thinking all the time, because I'm not sure what we're doing. I like the idea that we keep it big and broad, because I kind of like doing that. On the other hand, in fact, you brought this up, Effie, I think I thought it was helpful when we were doing the 400 celebration, and somebody who is new, it kind of not quite knowing what sustainability was about. And you came up, I think, with a whole page of questions that helped, whether that really changed any activities we were talking about for the celebration. And I really felt that was a great useful tool. In some ways, and I could be wrong, I'm seeing this as a tool like that, not to supersede the bigger picture, but to help keep everybody focused on how do we get this thing to have some traction on the ground. Now, I don't know if it's the correct tool or if I'm even the same ballpark, but that's what you're bringing to mind.
I guess so my follow-up is what are we screening? Oh, and Tori Brooks has her hand raised, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's not intended to be inclusive of everything that could possibly be screened, but that it's flexible. And there may be some things in the ordinance that aren't listed here, or there may be some things that are neither in the ordinance or listed that still would benefit from a
I mean, if you
sustainability
back up,
perspective.
I don't understand what we are screening. So it's more basic than that.
We're screening things that are big, important priority things that seem like they could benefit from a sustainability perspective. And it's really not intended to be any more prescriptive or precise than that. Flexibly, like the Conservation Commission questions probably don't lay out every possible circumstance where those might be applied.
No, but I appreciate Effie's point. I feel like we're, and if I'm hearing her correctly, we're sort of talking about two different things. This seems like a very useful tool that could help guide us as we start advising the city managers and the city councils and those kinds of things. I think there was another set of questions, which was a little bit more, you know, those questions that the Conservation Commission have, you have to answer those questions to see if you are eligible to get a conditional use permit. And so I presented them under the understanding that we were trying to define a little bit more what our meetings entailed, because we've had people
Oh,
come
okay.
in and present about all
Okay.
different kinds of things, and we have no guiding principles about if you want to come speak to the sustainability committee, here are some guidelines, here are some things that you have, some questions you need to answer before you come to meet with us and talk to us about things. So I feel like it's two separate.
Well, the committee
Potential
doesn't have any
things.
equivalent action and approval authority.
Right, but
and
we
that-
do have people who come in,
With
you know,
ideas.
who have ideas and suggestions, and I don't want to discourage that, but also sometimes it seems like they haven't spent some time learning about what's already happening in the city, so they come with these proposals or suggestions, and there's already a lot of stuff in the city that they might just not
So
be
one
aware
function
of,
of
so.
this would be to send to someone who contacts us and says, I would like to come talk to you about
Right.
a solar array on the Jones Avenue landfill. It would be,
Yeah, or I have. this
fine, please
idea.
take a look at this and think about these and incorporate them, or does your proposal, is it relevant for these?
I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that we
Tori,
get Tori in
Tori.
here. Tori, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, thank you. I think like to give a bit of perspective on this, I think the difference to me is the ordinance is kind of the overall goal, right? And that's why it's broad. And this to me feels more like the implementation check, the implementation pathway. For example, this feels very relevant to some of the green building and infrastructure working group conversations we've been having, right? That policy we put together and it's signed, but then there's this whole second part of following up with it and being the people who are asking, is it being implemented? Is it being considered? And these questions are what would spur that. A policy is only as good as it's being implemented. And so I think that a lot of these questions and them being specific will really help with that to make sure we're not just making policy, but we're implementing policy.
And one thought that I have up top where you list the 3 items, maybe instead of these 3, use the same 3 that are in the ordinance. Because the ordinance, it's kind of an umbrella, and if this captures that, I think it addresses some of the concerns. But I do think having questions does make sense. I mean, we're not always going to use all the questions or the questions in general, but having not seen something like this before, but hearing that the Conservation Commission uses something, it would make sense to have.
It's, I think, really intended to be quite flexible,
Yeah.
applied when applicable. Applied when applicable and as useful.
Lisa, we see you have your hand raised.
Yes, hi, Lisa Haggerty McMahon here. Know some of you, others, hello for the first time. I just wanted to ask if maybe Kate or someone, if there's a way to put up in the chat the location of the ordinance that was referred to, if it's online, so I can actually see it.
It's online. I can put it in the chat. Just give me a minute.
That's great. I don't know how to do chat on this end, so thank you.
So what this,
And well, I was wondering if I could make a quick comment while you're actually searching. I don't know who said it, but I like the idea of keeping the door open to a lot of ideas from a lot of different places. And I love the idea as well of having some kind of gatekeeper so that you can organize things into an actionable context for meetings and bringing things forward. So I think both ideas are important.
I was just gonna add this approach or concept kind of feels like the sustainable communities, approach. The, systems approach, systems thinking to start with, does it have any impact on the Earth's crust? Is it using fossil fuels or chemicals? Is it treating people fairly and efficiently? Is it having some impact on the natural resources? And so it's a similar set of questions, maybe a little more broad, but I think we're going for the same thing kind of in terms of, that's what eco-municipality kind of embodies, and that's what we try to do, I think, through things we do. This makes it a little more formal or a little more detailed. The one concern I have is sometimes when you get super detailed, you stop opportunities because you can't meet the conditions. So it's all how it's implemented, I guess.
A couple thoughts on Effie's first comment about being more precise about exactly from the ordinance, all the places this could be applied. I guess a counter to that is to offer some examples of, for example, which I think was the intent, and that maybe there could be some more examples on that, but I wouldn't want to be so prescriptive as limiting. And then the second point, I think from Lisa, I was thinking that maybe there could be something on this related to whether the action, I defined action as everything from policies, programs, projects, or other decisions, potentially could lead to an actionable item.
Mhm.
And that, again, that will really vary depending on the context and the application.
Sorry, Lisa, I thought there was a chat, but this is a webinar, so there's no chat. But if you go to the city website and search for Sustainability Committee, you can
Yes.
find, it's the last chapter under the side tab.
The article, but thank you for showing me on your screen. I just found it and I gotcha. Thank you. So it's just a one pager. Is that right?
Yes,
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that.
I don't think I meant to go more specific. I liked what Josh suggested about kind of replacing the first three here with the three purposes that are listed in the ordinance, because they seem broader, if anything, and they include environmental and ecological issues.
I think these are probably from the website. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, the website is really,
From the.
I would caution everybody about using the website. It's pretty,
I'll revise it to have the hyperlink to the ordinance.
great.
Thank you for taking the first step on this, and I think some very valuable discussion around it as well. I want to loop it back to a very important meeting last month that was focused on goals. We put a lot of footwork in, a lot of time on that, there was a massive activity. And it feels like we opened up the discussions and we were at a point where we started taking next steps. And so I want to hand it back to you for I'm sure after that, there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of movement after that. We pulled it all together. Where do we want to go next with goals as a group? Because we put in, that was a big focus, and I think a lot of open topics came up. But now it seems like that was very convergent. Now it's time to go more divergent to close it.
Am I getting older, or is a lot of things going? I can just put a frame what's coming out of my head, and then get to the goals. I think Peter was getting at the bigger picture. We are an eco-municipality. We have 4 systems. From the eco-municipality, we have our sustainability committee, which has the ordinance, which has what our mandate is to do. So in other words, now the way I'm seeing it simply, we're trying to get, somebody's writing this down. So what we're trying to do if somebody came in new and said, what is this committee about? We're an eco-municipality. We have 4 system conditions. If we follow them, we can get to sustainability. And there might even be, and then, so we now have a standing committee that is going to try to help us to get to these 4 systems conditions. And what we have already in place is the city is sponsored and distributed and educated around the 100 most important things to do on the planetary level. And then we've come down another level to the city, and now we have a CAP, which has even refining those down. So we got multiple layers to go through. So why I am honestly just searching as best I can is given all these important things to do, because it's not insignificant what we do. And just like I'm very pleased the way you're facilitating the meeting, because our time is the most precious thing we have. And so what we're trying to do is establish a structure for ourselves to be the most effective in doing our mandate, which is not what I understood us to do. Our mandate is to advise the council, advise the city manager. You know, and I'm like, wow. And everybody is knowledgeable people. So how do we do that effectively? So if those are our goals, then I think Bill has put an effort in. How do we do that with some specificity? What's going to be helpful? How do we communicate? I don't have answers to this, but that's the framework that I see. And I'm going to throw out one little piece here, that if I had one activity that might help us do it, is I'd like to just put on the agenda for now or next meeting, State of the City. Message from the Sustainability Committee. And we build that into the structure at 1, 2, or 3 times a year. We come and do what the mandate of our committee is to be doing, and we do it as a group. And we have, so that we're bringing something with some data and some, so that's kind of the context of the goal. So I'd say for me, and I'm just open to, this is more a dialogue. I don't think that our committee is here with our greatest leverage is to inform from an informed research, what are the priorities for our city to do? And then there's the other area, what's our priorities for public engagement? So that's kind of where I'm saying I think it's open for dialogue, because I don't have any.
I want to join in on, I really like how you paint the different levels and how it succeeded from one layer to the next with drawdown into the city. I always trying to think, you were mentioning the mandate is for the city and the city council. And I always try to think it back to the voice of the customer. And so as the customers of this committee that are pulling from us, what can we do better for our customers of the city council? Is there some, what's the customer reaction? What's is it raving reviews? Are we meeting? Are we meeting all of it? Is there stuff that we can be doing more of, that we can incorporate more into our goals? But just out of curiosity, from looking downstream of what we're producing, what is there, what's the feedback downstream? What can we be doing more of? What can we be doing less of?
We haven't, this is new. Yeah. In all the 6 different mayor 2-year terms, I think we presented, Peter, what, maybe 4 times in 12 years. And so we don't have a customer base that's even knows what we do. So we are actually establishing as a standing committee, what is our product if you talk, what are we doing? Because I never saw this as the particular, we were just a random committee that was getting low hanging fruit and it was very casual. We're in a new ballpark and we have a lot of skill in this room to address it. And I don't think it's an easy mandate. It's not an easy mandate. But since we have Josh is probably a representative of what the council is going through, and given what we've said, Josh, I would be really interested in hearing where we're at. What are you hearing and what kind of things are going through your mind?
So, couple thoughts. I think this will work on both ends where it would make sense for this committee to give somewhat regular feedback to the council, whether it be a written report. Some committees submit written reports to the council on a annual basis. Some committees that might actually speak for a total of 5 or 10 minutes as a presentation to the city council. So I think it would make sense to start to figure out what would make sense for us to do. I think a good time to have that conversation would be when the cap goes in front of the council. Because one of our major purposes as a standing committee is to advise on implementation of the cap. But then I think it's going to works the other way where the city council should start sending more stuff to the committee to review. Because there's oftentimes where the council has done that. We'll send things to various committees to look at and consider. But I think that should be increased. So it should work both ways with both the city council and city manager and staff sending stuff to the committee to review. But we have to make ourselves known. I think the best way to do that is either with a simple, whether it's annual or biannual, twice a year, whatever that might be, I don't know if it's biannual or not. Submitting a letter and possibly accompanying a presentation with it. So.
Let me just repeat, you're saying that what might be useful is that we do two things, one or the other or both, to have a written communication and a presentation. And what's coming up immediately, and that's why the date, everything is in flux, so we get a date. So now, rather than wait, we should start perhaps at our next meeting saying, let's test this out, and even using some of whatever we have to make a slight written presentation and a presentation regarding the cap as we understand. And that would give us kind of focus our mind. And would that be the next thing that would be useful? Maybe talk about, yeah.
I was gonna say, it just sort of anticipates the question of what would we be presenting, and I like the idea of the state of the city. And one way to do it would be, has the city become more sustainable? Have we accomplished the expectations in the ordinance? And I think that's, as wide as the ocean, really. I mean, that's pretty difficult. And I think it would need to be really filtered, and I think maybe beginning with the cap. But I think if you're looking at the state of the city, you would really need to be talking about what has changed, what has improved. If things gotten better, hopefully not worse. You really need to begin with a measure of a baseline, like a period. Let's say when the president does the State of the Union message, he's talking about, well, what's happened the last year, what's been accomplished the last year. And it seems like that's really something that would be maybe a good period reflecting over the next year. And maybe the focus is on the cap and on the implementation. If this committee is really very, very involved in setting up and implementing, helping implement the cap, that could be a focus. could also focus on other things, and that maybe we won't get to it today, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how sustainability was successfully incorporated into the Places to Live effort, and maybe it'll be incorporated into the master plan, maybe it'll be incorporated into the Market Square. I mean, ideally, and I think the intent of these questions is to make it easier to be able to say there is a sustainability consideration and overlay, and if that's the case, then whatever comes out of those priorities, whether it's a waste ordinance or master plan or Market Square or housing policy, would then give this committee the opportunity to say, well, we added value. I mean, we did directly or indirectly, maybe through these questions or a different version of these questions, supported more sustainable practices, which is the mission.
Building on that, you sparked so many different ideas in all of those topics, and one is it's reminding me of OKRs, or measure what matters. That's one topic. And then connecting to that is thinking about agile project management, because goal setting makes me think of project management as well. And in Scrum meetings, you talk about, what have I worked on since the last time we talked? What are we working on and going to do until the next time that we talk? And what's holding us back as a team? And so if we're trying to create more of the two-way dialogues, then it's taking measuring where we're at and where we're going and what's been done. So I think with these topics that are coming up, does that seem helpful to our customer, the downstream customers?
Tori's got her hand
Oh,
raised.
sorry, Tori. Sorry about that.
No, no worries. What you just said very much went along with what I was thinking on kind of where we've been, where we're going, and what the challenges, either past challenges or foreseen future challenges. And then that usually leads into your strategy moving forward, right? And so I think that approach is really good. I just encourage us to, the cap is our moving forward, right? And things coming out of the cap. But when we look back at what we've done, I think also policies that have been passed, policies that have been either come out of the committee as a blue ribbon committee before, or were supported by the committee, and how well those are either being implemented or the challenges to implementing those. Because I think I worry that we're going to come up as if the cap's the starting point, and as if there isn't a groundwork that we're building off of if we don't, make sure to review those things. Again, I think, I'm going to say this probably too many times, but implementing is just as important as passing. And I think making sure that our State of the Union is focused on the implementation and the actual, reductions of impact, not just the future reductions of impact per se.
Okay. Absolutely. Thank you. So we have 30 minutes left. I'm doing a time check because we had a massive list of topics here. Do we want to keep unpacking goals, or do we want to hit the other topics? The topics that we still have is right to know law and places to live are two other topics that we want to make time for as well. How are we feeling on goals? Do we want to continue down that path? Or?
I'm okay with continuing on for 10 minutes, and then unless the other two are ones that want to. Great. This seems very challenging and productive. And what's occurring to me is a state of a city would be like State of the Union. It's as much for the comments as it is for the PR that it gets. And so I would see we are always looking, how do we do public engagement? And I think that we don't have an active press anymore, in the sense that the newspaper sends reporters out and so forth. So I don't know, and this is more of a query. Is the meeting, city council meeting, getting more or less, is the news, where are we?
Any more what?
More hits, or what I'm trying to think is, if we do a state of the city, who is our audience? It's the city council. Yes, that's our mandate. However, if we do that well, in the past, there would have been a news reporter taking some photographs and saying, here was what it's out, and it gets on the front page of the paper. Where are we out? Where are we
Yeah.
at even with communicating?
So the questions about the paper, I could speak to that. So everyone knows papers are, their business model has gone under ever since Facebook and social media took over their advertising revenue. And the Herald used to have 3 reporters covering city business. Now there's essentially just 1 reporter covering most stuff related to the city government. And ever since COVID and Zoom and everything else, the reporter normally watches the meetings and might follow up with questions. I guess if no one reaches out to the reporter will look at the agenda for the meeting, maybe reach out to counselors and ask questions in advance. If not, watch the meeting and then call up the counselors and ask follow-up questions. And I know there used to be a quota, like every city council meeting should produce, whether it's half a dozen or a dozen stories. I don't know if that's still a thing anymore, but yeah, like everyone is aware, newspapers and most news outlets, unless if they're I'll use the New York Times as an example, like it's my hometown paper, but its income comes from being an app on the phone that people use to do crossword puzzles or Wordle or anything else. That's the primary source of income. Like the news is just an afterthought in their business model. Unfortunately, the business models for the news industry is going away.
The recipes in sports are also very good. Have active apps.
But again, that's their business model, is their apps. Not news.
And so just to follow up, the newspaper isn't the only source of news. Obviously, it's a very diminished source. And so the city tries to get as much as it can, and social media tries to do its newsletter. We could write a letter that maybe the paper would publish instead of having to rely on a reporter to cover a city council meeting. Maybe the state of the city is also a document that could be distributed. So it's a blanket approach. Try to get as many out there, as many places as you can if you want to reach people, I think is.
And Lisa's hands is a little easier.
Yeah, yes, hi again. Peter, and I was gonna say Kate, but she walked out for a sec, I guess. If you remember, we were talking with Student Conservation Association about Peter, last week or 2 weeks ago about the social media outlets that they have with their organization. Does this committee or anyone related to what we do in Portsmouth actually have the social media presence yet, or you were just speaking lightly about it? Is that kind of an untapped area?
The city does.
The city has an active social media presence. I should say, to my knowledge, of social media for years now. But yeah, we have a dedicated staff member who's very good with social media in outgoing, and imagines doing a good job at posting, keeping the public who subscribes to our social media accounts.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So she does. So you do have a resource within the city, and I'm wondering, Peter, if that collaboration with SCA might also lead to something that actually helps, because I mean they're an organization who also has one dedicated function at the national level, but all for obviously the conservation matters. And I'm wondering if there's some learnings that could be gained there through that collaboration that we're just starting up, because the model that we discussed with them a couple weeks ago was that if you're speaking even just about how to raise the awareness and who's your audience and who do you want to know about what you're doing, and there are many different pockets right within the community of populations that would be interested. And there's this one that we're targeting is with SCA is with the young, I want to say young adult, but the youth, say the high school and, young adult. And then, of course, the parent community. So if SCA does actually successfully get one of their programs going, Peter, with the city this year, and we have one of those community days within that project that we we're talking about, that may be one great pilot opportunity to see how you can increase the level of awareness through the use of their social media campaigns that they do. So that's just my two thoughts about integrating and leveraging the expertise of some of the partnerships that we're building now.
Somebody summarized what Lisa just said, so I'm going to put in the notes what.
She's talking about the Student Conservation Organization and the Student Conservation Corps and partnering with the city and how they have a social media presence of their own. And if we partner with them on a project, then that social media could be tapped into as part of the project, but also it reaches the youth in addition to, other people in the city. I think it would be, we've talked with them about focusing on a project in the city that might be improving trails around the city, trail access to the rail trail, which is going to be a transportation corridor. So there's a lot of work that could be done, and we're looking at different grant opportunities that might help along those lines.
Well, and I would build off that and say, we have youth sitting here. We
Yeah.
need to make sure that they are part of the state of the city as well, because they
Right.
have very fluid, active social media channels as well, so.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, school vacation week
Sure.
isn't the best
Right.
turnout, but
Right, so we make sure that they were engaged and part of the discussion.
And we get new audiences that normally aren't engaged here by them, different groups sharing on their own, to their own audiences. So it's a nice way to share it. Bringing it back, I want to make sure that, do we cover who are customers? Do we feel like we have our ultimate customer, citizens customers, the city is customer? Who are we satisfying our customers? We heard one thing that our customers might want more of, and it sounds like we're down a path that is really worthwhile on the goals and the strategy. Do we have other customers that are we producing a product for our customers?
And I'd like to respond, but I'm coming out with more questions than I am answers to this. Because we're a volunteer once a month group. And I'm saying, if we could communicate to anybody, the city councilors, the city manager, or the eco club, or the high school, or the communities, or the low income. I'm saying, who has the most leverage? We are uniquely placed, and I don't have an answer to this. But if you're fixing a house, you want to figure out where are you going to put your resources, and even you're asking the audience, is there one person we want to do? I mean, it's really difficult because I think we have a new mandate and we have some urgency, and I have to say it almost in we need to accelerate and scale in a short time frame. So given acceleration and scaling in a short time frame, maybe we don't want to go after the, social. And the reason I brought it up about the paper, I'm thinking of dropping my subscription to the local paper because I have so much other stuff coming in. And it's so much global stuff. And so I think if I'm any indication, most people are really, it's a global community and we're affected by all of this. And we're in a position to what we can with what we got where we are. Henry, you weren't here.
I was not here last meeting, correct?
Teddy Roosevelt said, or it's attributed to him, do what you can with what you got where you are. And now, what I really thought was important to me about last meeting is what we got. We are not ordinary citizens, and we're not the city council. We're this body that has some power to influence some things. And so what we got is now a mandate. So it's a new ballpark. Do what we can with what we got, where we are. We have to define where we're at, what we got.
Well said.
Lee hasn't taught this.
So I like your question. And your question is, who are our customers, I think? Because right now, we're very focused, I'm gonna point to you guys because you're very focused on influencing city council. But our customers are our residents, our businesses, our municipal staff and other stakeholders. And even in the short period sitting on this council, don't know that we do enough to actually have an impact on sustainable practices or educating our community on sustainable practices in terms of residents and businesses. And if you want to have a larger impact, then you need to get the community involved, not just the city.
And to that level, we put in a couple of years of experimenting with Bright Action, which is an app that is designed for young people now and designed for the community. And maybe we aren't marketers, we aren't. So maybe what we do, our leverage with what we got, we have a year's experience with Bright Action. Maybe we use that as something we try for a year and see if we can write a newsletter, and use that as a tool. I'm not sure, but that's, some people spent years and a lot of money to create that. So that could be a way to, for every year that I've been on this committee, we've tried to reach to the community. Everybody wants to reach to the community. Real easy, right, Peter? So anyway, that's.
And has it been successful though?
Yeah. And are we anywhere near where we need to be? No. Is what we've done in the past going to get us to a climate safe planet? Don't think so. A really quick part.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is really brainstorming and I think it's useful. It's somewhat circular, but I think it's inevitable. It really has to be. I mean, seems like the three key questions are really what's the audience? That's an important question. What's the content? I mean, the content is really going to be determined by what that audience is. And then we've also talked about what the mechanism for distributing it, which seems like it's maybe at this point less important than what's the audience and what's the content, because the options are things like a 5-minute presentation on the state of the sustainability state of the city, a written report that could be distributed through various different means using social media and other possibilities. But I think we're sort of circling around really as we have to be on this. But it's a circular conversation.
I think you're absolutely spot on. And we're going to continue. I mean, any agile project you do, you loop back, you learn, you pivot, you move forward. And I think going back to your point of engaging with different people in the community, I think the sustainability fair was a perfect example of engaging with the community, and that's a customer. And 750 people showed up. That means that the customer was engaged.
And the community conversations, especially if we've got the library as a partner,
Exactly,
and we'll fill the room.
exactly. So that's perfect.
It's doing it once a year now.
Being respectful of time, we have 15 minutes left. Bill, we haven't gotten to your topic. We haven't forgotten.
This is the third time that we've run out of steam at the end, and I'd be perfectly happy to, yeah, and I can just say what I was thinking of doing on this and maybe punt it to the next. I think it's less urgent now that it's a couple months after the places to live dialogue. But what I was thinking of and talked to Kate about was an update on that, but then letting Peter talk about what's happened since then, because there's been a lot of activity around that. And mostly what I wanted to do was to use that as an example of what it means to introduce sustainability and these sorts of questions into a major city priority. The CAP was one. I think sustainability is all over that one. The places to live, I think sustainability is an important part of that. And I think in some part, because it came up organically from the community, 150 people involved in that, but also having had people from this sustainability committee involved in the steering committee, organizing it, in the kickoff meeting, and actively in the groups like Effie and Jess and people on the Portsmouth Climate Action, me. So it came up, but that's sort of an example, because these sorts of questions were baked into that from the start. So the question is, what are the results? And I think you can see the results when you look at the report from the 140, 150 people who participated in the 14 working groups. Sustainability is in that. And I wanted to maybe highlight that a little bit as an example of maybe what this tool could help in the next activity. But maybe if it's okay with everybody, since it's always at the end of the day, maybe punt that to the next week to talk a little bit more. And Peter, maybe you'll be up for talking about what's followed.
I can give a quick update now anyway.
Sure.
So the Places to Live report was something that was put on by the Portsmouth Listens, but one of the key players is our housing navigator, someone we hired to try to increase our housing in the city, and worked with the Portsmouth Listens, worked with the people doing the Places to Live. And if people are interested in a summary of that, the housing committee meets every other Thursday, and next Thursday Howard will give a short summary of the Places to Live work, which he already did once before, but he'll do again, and Bill will give it to us at the next meeting. But the housing committee is kind of a follow-on to the land use committee, which was looking at housing opportunities for basically workforce housing and all housing in the city. They've been meeting every 2 weeks. I think they're going to go to once a month at some point, but right now they're on a pretty aggressive schedule to try and get things done. The big topic that's come up and has raised a lot of interest is the housing at the Sherburne School. And that committee recommended that they do housing at the Sherburne School to the city council. The city council agreed to that, and they're going to be looking at how that's going to take place at their next meeting to some degree, but really it's going to move forward. But the committee itself will then look at other housing opportunities, whether there's housing opportunities on city properties, whether there's housing opportunities through grants to get things to come to the city, to get housing going. A big part of it will be looking at the zoning in the city. So one big thing that happened was the city council changed a whole bunch of office research zones to a mixed use zone called Gateway, which allows housing and commercial activity on the same property, which could allow for more housing. They'll be looking closer at those zoning regulations to try to increase the density of housing in those areas through incentives, most likely. Looking at other zoning opportunities that might be out there. So the committee has a lot of work ahead, and they're going to be talking about what that work's going to be. They're doing a goal setting exercise as well, and it's taking them some time too, because it's always challenging to do that. But there's a lot going on with that. And I think one of the key things, just to close out what I'm saying, is that they want to make sure that Places to Live group, which, like you said, kind of grew organically and had a lot of good energy, stays active and stays supportive of the efforts to create housing and to get their input and their energy towards getting more housing in the city. So a lot of interesting work happening, and I'm hopeful that out of it comes more workforce housing and more housing in general in the city, which is what we really need.
And when we say sustainability overlay, like the basic foundation of this committee, I think you'll see that in the Places to Live report and the reports from the individual committees, that equity is all over that. Yeah, the 3 E's all over that. Cross references to the CAP, that's in there too. Greenhouse gas reductions, and that it's maybe housing is the key focus, but there are other co-benefits to be considered. that are sustainability co-benefits. And I think that, let's say if there was another similar initiative underway, our committee could have a role in making sure that it takes a sustainability focus going forward. If we can help contribute to that.
Thank you. Any questions on that topic? Because we have one more topic to review. We're right to know law.
I just had one quick question from the last commenter, if that's okay. Sorry, I just raised my hand. And the question for Peter and Kate, the comment that was just made was whether the sustainability committee would have any ability to review on the, the development that's happening rapidly. And that was my question, I think, a week or two ago about to the Conservation Commission. Because their only purview is is within 100 feet of wetland buffer. So I just wanted to make sure I got some clarity, if there's any clarity to be gained. Is there any opportunity for a sustainable review on things outside of the commission's purview through this committee? I'm talking about building workforce housing, build just all the stuff that you have to do to permit and approve projects that are happening at, a very rapid pace.
Not a land use committee, so they wouldn't review in terms of a review and decision making, but they could give input, I suppose.
You're saying the land use committee's in existence already. I guess what I was asking is the question or the comment that was just made. Is there any potential for that you're going to see? You're going to see more review from the sustainability lens of all the building that's happening around the city. So there truly is a kind of a balance.
Potential, this committee could recommend things to the council to change the things that are already there and add more sustainability ideas. There's definitely sustainability built into the zoning ordinance. The Conservation Commission has it. There's
Yeah.
a master plan that's looking at some certainly sustainability approach. The Market Square master plan probably will have sustainability components. As Bill mentioned, the master plan will and does now already have sustainability components. So yeah, I think it's in the forefront of a lot of people's mind in the city. It gets talked about a lot.
Okay, it's built into a number of your different committees and reviews of this kind of things that I'm just not aware of, and I'd love to learn about.
And
Okay.
this committee could approach it in a less ad hoc and more explicit way, potentially, and the sorts of questions we talked about earlier could be a tool for that.
Is that,
Thank you. I will follow up so I can learn more about it. Thank you.
thank you. We have five minutes left. There is, the only item that we haven't hit yet is right to know law.
So I might have rephrased that. I think Effie, you might have brought it up.
Yeah, so other city committees have had a training on the right to know law. And since questions have come up, I don't want to put it on you, Kate, but someone who's no longer on the committee sent an email to the whole group and it wasn't appropriate or, following right to know. So I thought it'd be good for us to get the training, that's all.
Yeah, so the legal department would come and talk to the group about right to know law and, try to tailor it to this group. And as a standing committee, it makes sense. So I can talk to them about that. Or
That'd be great. Thanks.
You can do that for next meeting.
I can talk to them before the next meeting. Very busy.
Oh, you mean they have other things on their?
They have
agenda?
other things to do too, so.
All right,
But
yeah.
I'll
you'll
get a report back.
to- Good.
Back, yeah.
And I wasn't sure what happened to the single-use plastics. I know Kristen is on the call. Originally, we were supposed to report back to city council in May. So I just want to make sure that that hasn't slipped off our radar.
Yeah, we did a really, really brief update in our last meeting that it didn't go back to council because it's sitting legal. And I know legal and health are working together, and Kristen can pop in too if she's still there. Legal and health are working together to make sure that it's compliant with New Hampshire state law. And I know health is working on a lot of initiatives just to get education out there before we do any ordinances.
So
or-
do we report back to the city council or how does that happen? I don't know. Or does someone from the health department take care of that.
My understanding is that uh, the, the plastics ban that was put forward was, the suggestion was to turn it into a policy that the health department could then educate people with
Right,
instead of.
because enforcement was an
instead of-
issue.
Instead of something they couldn't enforce.
Right.
That was a skip the stuff.
Skip the stuff. Is that what we're
Isn't
talking?
banning, but that's not banning plastic. That's
No.
just,
Yeah,
that's changing a box, literally, like,
So maybe I'm confused.
yeah.
it was a couple of months back where we had a sample ordinance and Kristen was involved. Kristen, I don't know if you want to comment?
We have not met again with legal at this point. There's been a lot of people not around to get back together, so I don't have another update for you yet.
So maybe we should put it on the agenda for next month so we don't lose track of that.
I know in terms of reporting back to council, I think the legal department reported back so that on our behalf, not as a recommendation, but just updating the council that it was postponed so that we're not in a time crunch to report by a certain date.
Yeah, that sounds, at the city council meeting that coincided with Student Government Day, I believe that is what we were informed, that the legal department's going to review the proposed policy and then report back after working with the health department on it. So I think it's
Okay.
good for us to keep abreast, but I don't think the city council is waiting for a report back from
Okay.
us as well.
Right. The other thing for the agenda next month, I thought, is if we could talk about the website and set up a committee or a work group to talk about content on the website. That would be great to add to the agenda.
It's been a topic that we've brought up a few times.
Yeah, it has, and we haven't focused on it. Right.
And if we're talking about next month's meeting, so I think on today's notes, it said the next one is 5:30. That's actually the 5th Thursday of the month. Oops. So
Or the Memorial Day?
Memorial Day is the weekend before that.
So it's the fourth, but, oh, you're right, one, it should always be the fourth Thursday of the month.
Yeah.
What does it say on the city
It's-
website?
5:23.
Oh, it says 5.
Well, I don't know, 5:23,
Oh.
24.
No, it was my mistake.
Okay.
Okay.
It's on the
Okay.
city. Okay,
On the right
that's,
place
I
there.
just was
Happy
looking
Memorial
at
Day.
the agenda and I was like, wait, that's the community
what day is it?
conversation. I,
So
The
it's the
23rd. It's the 23rd.
Okay, sorry about that.
no problem.
Oh,
Okay, we are,
week, that's smart.
But Steve DeTrolio is listed as the recorder. And he's no longer on the committee.
Oh, so the,
I can do it because I can't facilitate on July. Hold on, go.
I don't know if everyone still has access to the Google Drive that John Kennedy set up, but that schedule's updated, so in that I can send an updated link for everyone to access it. I forget who I listed as the next facilitating group, but I took Steve and Aubrey and Herb off and switched things around. Yep, and Steve is still on this one. Okay, so maybe I'll send out an update tomorrow of who's doing what.
Well, Mary and John.
So you facilitated last time, took minutes this time, so that means, wait, no.
I took the minutes last
You
time.
took minutes.
And so
So we're gonna have a brand new set.
so if I'm.
He's taking minutes, so he would facilitate.
Okay,
Usually.
but you facilitated last time because Aubrey was absent. That's why you stepped in.
But that was a bonus because
Was
you
a
were
bonus,
doing
yeah.
Were
the
you okay with?
3Ws.
I don't mind facilitating if I'm not,
Just
I would
as-
prefer not to take notes more than once every 10 years.
We're over time, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then we do the closeout?
Yeah. Are we taking away or last thoughts or what?
What are the last thoughts or what are we taking away from this evening?